Thank you so much for spending some time with us today and going through the models that we've built. Your feedback is so important. The feedback that we've had from our community, because this is a community-sourced model where the community gives feedback and actually helps us in the direction for charting a path back to school next year. So we're going to go through some models today. Your feedback's super important. Let me set the stage for you so you know what the experience is all about. So, first of all, I'm going to run through some key findings that we saw in order to build our model, because these key findings, now we found lots of data. We collected data for about 4 weeks, and we boiled it down to some of these key findings so that you understand what was guiding our thoughts as we were building this out. So first of all, we want to have a safe return to school. Everyone wants to have a safe return to school, so what that means. Also, everyone thought it was critical that we have choice, because everyone has a different story, different situation, variety of needs. So we need to have choice built into our model. We also have to have, most people want to be back in the building and have that experience. So both teachers and students and families. So we're going to do our best to do that. We also have meaningful feedback and support and learning. It's hard for teachers to run remote learning and in-person blended learning concurrently at the same time. So we're going to try to build models that they're not doing that at the same time, because it's really hard for teachers to manage both of those. So we're going to try to eliminate them doing that at the same time concurrently. And then recognize how critical relationships are. Our culture guide says that, building meaningful relationships. So we're going to focus in on how do we do that in both environments. And then also, we're going to place more of an importance on synchronous learning. That's something where the teacher and the student are at the same place in remote learning at the same time. So trying to build more of that experience in Remote Learning 2.0. So we have 2 approaches that we want to bring to you today. There's lots of approaches, but these 2 approaches seem to be the ones that people are giving us feedback as the ones we need to look at and consider seriously. So here is the whole model. So this is the model itself. We're going to look at 2 approaches that are within this model that we're going to ask for your feedback. First of all, our first choice is to have students back in person in the fall. We know that not every student is going to be able to do that, so we'll also have remote learning running all year long. And that will be something that people could select right up front to go into. Teachers that are facilitating this remote learning 2.0, and 2.0 means we're just going to improve it based on what we learned this year. Whoever selects to be in here, this will be a different group of teachers that are facilitating this. This is, the majority of our teachers will be up in this zone right here. So we're, again, not asking them to do things concurrently at the same time. This right here, the blend, and I'll just jump here. The red just means that there may be rolling closures next year based on the data. So if there's a spike in coronavirus in a region, they may close us for a bit of time. And so we're prepared for that. So this remote learning would be the teachers up here. In that remote learning, we'll have the same feel as this remote learning. So there's some alignment and equity to these experiences. However, blended learning is where we're going to ask you to spend a majority of your time understanding and giving us feedback. So I'm going to show you 2 approaches. Approach number 1, the students are in school, in person, 2 days a week in this model. A whole class is in for that day, split over 2 spaces. So 2 days a week, the whole class, so if I'm a 3rd grade teacher, my whole class comes in, split over 2 different spaces to keep social distancing. And this right here, this blended, means that they have applied some physical distancing guidelines or rules that we have to follow as a school. So that's what's causing us to go into this yellow zone. So again, 2 days a week, 3 days a week they'll be home, and I'll show you what that looks like. Here, this is a half-day model, so an AM and a PM group coming from regional areas around our district, and the half-day is 5 days a week, in person, but half days. The other half of the day would be at home. And so let me walk you through this. So this is that first one right here. So this is the Region 1, Region 2. So on Mondays, everyone's home doing some kind of remote learning, and this is where your ideation, your feedback is going to help us to build this prototype even better. And then this Region 1, they're going to be at home, and this is a 1 hour shorter day, whereas when they're at school, it's a 1 hour longer day. So again, my whole class comes in, split over 2 rooms, in person on this day, and they're here for 1 hour longer. On the next day over here, they're at home for an hour shorter, so we could eliminate some of the screen time. And that's what we're trying to do there in that remote learning. Try to do more in-person learning. Same thing here. So you can follow the pattern. This would be half of our school, but you'd have your whole class at a time just split over 2 rooms, and we'd have someone covering the other rooms. So this is where we're going to need your help in thinking. Same thing happens the next day. So this is one of the approaches that we're going to ask your feedback on. Now, the second approach also came from feedback in earlier sessions. This is a half-day model. So Region 1, again, half of our school district will be here, but this time you only have half of your class at a time. So again, third grade teacher, for example, you would have half of your class at a time. So in the morning, you'd have kids from this Region 1, and you would be in school and have them for 2.5 hours. So our 7-12 time would be starting at 7:30 in the morning. They would have them for 2.5 hours. They would go home. There would be a big break in the middle of the day where there would be plan time, there would be lunch, and there would be time for professional learning built into that middle of the day. And then we would have students come back. And part of the reason that there's time built in the middle of the day is because transportation. In order to transport all of our students, we need that time. And so the second half of the day, you would have the second group come in. So the second half of your class would come in, and they would be with you for 2.5 hours. Now, while students are at home, when you see them in person, it's that blended learning model. So you're setting things up and giving them some things to work on. So when they're at home, they have some things to work on. And then they come back in and you check those and you work and you learn new content, and then you send them home for their other half of the day. So that's the model here. Now, this model, the teacher is on pretty much their normal rhythm. So their day is about the same length. But teachers are here 5 days a week in this. And the students, again, are here for half days. But students have in-person experiences with their teachers 5 days a week in this model. So this is a half-day model. There's a lot of details still to work through here, but that's why you're here, to help us to think that through in the ideation. All right, so I'm going to hit pause here, and this is where you get to ask clarifying questions about the model itself. And specifically, we're going to ask you to focus your time in the 1B approach. So any questions you have about the model itself, but specifically we're going to ask you to spend your time today looking at this approach and this approach. So again, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for spending it with us. And remember, your feedback is so important to helping us to find the right model to serve our students, our staff, and our families. Thanks again. Enjoy the experience.